Some people chase influence by being loud, others earn it by being humble. Today's guest has built an over 14-year agency, a statewide storytelling platform, and a leadership philosophy that flips the script. He's living proof that influence doesn't always come from the corner office. Sometimes it's built from the ground up, one story at a time. Welcome back to Is Anything Real, the show where we cut through the hype and talk about what actually drives growth. I'm Adam W. Barney, and today I'm excited to sit down with Jim Matuga. Jim is the founder of Interaction Media, a West Virginia agency he's scaled for 14 plus years, the host of the Positively West Virginia podcast, and the author of Humble Influence. His work blends storytelling, leadership, and marketing in a way that's both hyper-local and widely resonant. Jim, welcome to the show.
Adam, thanks for having me. I love what you're doing, and I'm just glad to be here with you to have a conversation.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Jim, let's start by, take us back to 2010. What inspired you to launch Interaction Media, and what gap did you see in the market there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I had been in the advertising business since 1988, believe it or not, Adam, way before you were born.
Oh, no, I was born, I was 6 in 1988 to be.
All right, there you go.
Jim,
well, you look very young. So yeah, 1988, I graduated from West Virginia University with a degree in advertising. And what got me into advertising to begin with was a love of writing. I didn't realize it, but my background as a musician, as a drummer, as a songwriter, and just loving to write got me into the advertising field. And so I built the business, and it actually was 2010. I had the idea. 2011, October, I decided to start my own company. I had worked in media companies my whole career, radio, newspaper, television, cable, direct mail. And I just love this. I love advertising, and I love marketing, and I love telling great stories. And I started Interaction Media really with the idea of trying to do something different. I didn't want to just take commissions off of media buys, 15% or whatever. Yep. I wanted to add value in different ways. And I didn't know it at the time, but what that vision of creating something different has really evolved and morphed over the last 14 years. And as we start our 15th year now, really building a culture of great people that tell great stories. We tell brand stories that connect people, not just communicate, but we connect and make those connections.
And I mean, I think we would both probably say 14 years is a long time in agency life, right? And 15
yes,
coming soon. Yep. You kind of started to talk about these key ingredients, but what are sort of the key ingredients in sustaining and scaling business in a region that I would say is not frequently seen as a marketing hub, actually?
Yeah, it's kind of neat because Morgantown is in West Virginia, but we're actually in the Pittsburgh DMA. So we're kind of like a top 25 market in the country here in America. But yeah, we're in a economically depressed state. Let's just face it, we're at the bottom of all the good lists and the top of all the bad lists, here in West Virginia. And so it makes it a little bit of a challenge. We're not able to define a specific niche, so to speak, like healthcare or tourism or whatever. And so we have to be diverse, and so we have to have diversity of thought and diversity of our people coming from different backgrounds. But the thing that holds us together is this love and passion for telling great brand stories. And that, to me, is the essential ingredient to finding great people, is having that camaraderie, that common vision of like, hey, we want to take our talents and abilities that we've been blessed by our Creator and go out and serve the marketplace. And that's what we're doing.
Right. And I mean, that sort of leads me to sort of wonder also, I know you specifically have even mentioned a couple times already how storytelling is what connects so deeply with the community there. Mm-hmm. How do you balance that local focus, with that idea of bringing West Virginia to a more prominent place on the map, of course, in the world of marketing, but focus along with strategies that actually can scale nationally as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. I appreciate that. Here in our state, we work with some of the top brands, like the iconic brands like West Virginia Lottery and WVU Medicine, for instance, two of our long-term clients, and we just love working with them. Mm-hmm. But we're also deeply entrenched in the outdoors community. And so we have a kind of a separate sister brand called IAM Interaction Media,
Yep.
IAM Outdoors. And what we're trying to do there over the last couple of years, Adam, is leverage our passion for the outdoors and being able to go after national brands and some international brands. I think of like the North Face or Patagonia or Orvis. And why can't we leverage the magnificent beauty that we have here in West Virginia, untapped, by the way,
Yep. Yep.
here on the East Coast, and be able to create content, true, authentic story content, video, especially, and photography here in our state. And that's what we're working towards right now and having some good success with that.
That's incredible, actually. To sort of, shift gears a little bit, Jim, your book, Humble Influence, challenges the leadership obsessed culture that we're in as well. What does humble influence really mean to you?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. I'm very excited. We've gotten off to a great start with the launch of Humble Influence, published by Spirit Media. And the reason I wrote the book, Adam, is because I believe that no matter what organization, whether it's an ad agency or marketing agency, it could be a nonprofit organization, it could be a Fortune 500 company, and so much emphasis is placed on this idea of leadership. And I'm a leadership student. I mean, I eat it and drink it every day. But what I've learned is that real influence oftentimes comes from the middle. It's not somebody with a title or a corner office. And what I'm trying to do with Humble Influence, the book, is to celebrate, dispel the myths that, followership is bad. I saw something the other day, and it was paying homage to somebody who was recently, killed. And it said, do like they did, be a leader, not a follower. And I'm like, wait, you could just said be a leader. Don't put not a follower in there, because that has a negative connotation. And that's where really most of us are. We're in follower roles. And I feel like if we could dispel the myth that followership is second class or less than or not as important, then we can go a long way in helping to equip people to be great followers, number one. I have a whole plan of how to do that, but also that equips people to become eventually great leaders. If you can be a great follower, you're destined to be a great leader.
I mean, it gets back into that realm of something that I learned through a certificate course at Harvard that I went through around power and influence for positive impact, right? It happens. And I know you've also said followership is the intentional, disciplined act of coming alongside a leader to advance a shared vision.
Yeah.
That really does flip the usual script. Maybe a little deeper. Why is followership actually so powerful, especially in that equation of power and influence, and how even the small cogs can influence the large cogs?
Yeah. So just in my humble role here, leading, 13 or 14 people in my agency, I can't do anything unless I have people that can take the ideas, and sometimes crazy ideas that I have, and actually implement them. Right. And so the followership role, whether it's my number two person or somebody who's just a new hire, they all play a significant role in making sure that vision and that objective is accomplished. So I place a lot of emphasis on followership. I love people that are diligent followers and know how to do it well. And I try to equip them to be the best that they can be in that particular role.
I love it. And I mean, maybe pulling a little bit out, and you can feel free to pick up a copy of your book there. But for those listening who don't yet, let's say, hold the top title, how can they start exercising influence right where they are today?
Yeah, one of the easiest ways, Adam, thank you for asking that, is to buy into the vision and whatever that is. So you have a leader who's saying, hey, I would like to accomplish this. You don't necessarily have to buy in 100%, but find something that you can be passionate about, right? And maybe it's the idea of humility, or maybe it's the idea of integrity, whatever that is that they're trying to accomplish. As from the leadership perspective, find something that you can buy into. Being part of that. That buy-in. You hear leaders talking about, I'm having a hard time getting buy-in. Well, you don't necessarily need 100% buy-in of every single thing that you're wanting to do, but find people around you from a leader's perspective that can grasp into something. tap into that passion, tap into that dream that they have, and find that one thing. And from the followers' perspective, I would urge them to do the same thing. Find something that you can grab onto and say, okay, I can get behind this. Let's go. I want to make this happen too.
Right. I think that gets into probably dispelling one of the biggest myths about influence and leadership today. Flipping the script a little bit on that, though. Think back, 14 years, 15 years. If you could give yourself one piece of advice to your younger self starting the agency, what would it be?
Believe that it's going to work. Oh, Adam. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's just hearing you say 14 years is kind of crazy, because I didn't know if this thing was going to last 14 weeks or 14 months, let alone 14 years. And so just believing, having confidence in myself, I really struggled with that as I started out, and didn't, you're trying to wayfind a lot of times. The first 2 years I feel like are just a blur. But yeah, if I could have had a little bit more confidence and faith in myself that this was going to actually be like, if I could fast forward and say, oh my gosh, you're going to be fine, Jim, take those risks, do the thing, I would have definitely done that a little bit differently.
Awesome. And I mean, clearly it's a book and it's a philosophy for anyone seeking to make a difference, no matter position or title, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Leadership is influence, but so is followership. And the funny thing about me writing a book about influence is that that's what the field we're in. Advertising and marketing is influencing people to make, take action, to buy something, to press a button, to subscribe, whatever it might be that we're trying to do as a call to action. It's about influence. So I take that very, very seriously, Adam. And I know you do too. I mean, we're out there trying to, to influence people, sometimes through an ad. Maybe it's a marketing strategy. It's a social media post. We're trying to influence them to do something. And there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that, and making sure that it's done the right way, that there's truth and there's, authenticity behind it as well.
Talking about humble influence, also, you've hosted more than 300 episodes of Positively West Virginia.
Yes.
What have you learned about the power, in that sense, of amplifying local business stories?
Yeah, I love that. When I first started the podcast, it was me on my iPhone with the old tethered AirPods or earbuds or whatever they were called.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I started it in 2017, and it's been hundreds and hundreds of episodes. And what the goal is, I learned that there's so many stories out there of entrepreneurs and business owners, small business, even nonprofits that have this startup mindset, and they took a risk and they started a business. And I felt like there was an underserved market there, that people really needed to hear these stories. Number one, as I mentioned, West Virginia, we are an economically depressed state in a lot of areas. Certain markets, like where I'm at, is thriving very well, but most of the state is struggling. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if we could come around these entrepreneurs, tell their story, and maybe not only help their business, but also to inspire other people to say, hey, maybe I could start a business.
Right.
And that's what we do. We tell the origin stories of these companies, and sometimes they're very large companies that grew out of a mom and pop or a one person entrepreneurial venture. But I love telling the stories, the things that I learn every time. It's one of those things, Adam, where when I have a podcast scheduled, typically I record on Mondays and Tuesdays. I look at who the guest is coming up that day. I can't wait to have that conversation. It's one of those things that I get to do, in my leading my company, and I just love it. And I'm not tired of it after all these years and hundreds of episodes. And I learned so much, and I just want to add value to people.
Yeah. And I mean, this ties back into sort of what you started with today, talking about storytelling. And those stories cut through the noise better than most paid ad tactics, and in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
What are some of the? I mean, I'd love for you to share maybe one or two of the examples of how you've improved or helped a West Virginia business grow through promoting them there. It's a wider understanding, I would imagine, even beyond just the borders of West Virginia, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Positively West Virginia episodes are recorded. The video goes out over YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, and then the audio and all the popular podcasts, just like you do.
Yep.
But what's cool about it is I encourage folks once their stories are out there to to share them because it helps us and helps them. But what's really interesting is we've been able to develop some sponsors. So we put some paid targeted marketing behind that through social media, and each one of these episodes now is getting 50 to 60,000 downloads
Wow.
each episode. So
Yeah.
we have now we've created this over years, and the idea of we've never missed a Thursday publication date for years and years and years,
Yep.
and so I think some of the feedback that I get is very profound. From had a company on this was about a year ago or so. We were talking about they make a canned pepper in a tomato sauce. It's called
Yep.
Oliverios peppers. And the guy sent me an email. He's like, Jim, you're not going to believe this. He goes, but my orders have been blowing up from across the country. He goes, I don't know how you did that, but that was awesome.
Yeah.
And those kinds of things. And then you also hear of people who write in requesting to be on the show, and they've heard somebody being on the show, and they said, this is like not something this is out of my comfort zone. They'll say that, and they'll say, I'd like to come on and talk about my story. And so it's inspiring people to talk about their business a little bit. And I try to talk, to these founders and CEOs and presidents and, entrepreneurs and really tell them, like, you're the hero of the story. I'm simply the guide. So I just ask the questions and try to guide the conversation, much like you're doing, Adam. You do a wonderful job. And it's just nice to be able to have those opportunities to leverage like what I believe are my God-given talents and abilities and help them.
And I mean, it's from Positively West Virginia, even back to your agency work, I can tell how critical place and community play in building authentic influence.
Yes.
Outside of even maybe just the broad stroke of storytelling, is it connecting and inspiring others? I would say it's probably the biggest part of what that authentic influence brings to the
That's
table.
right. That's right. A lot of people communicate, but few connect. Right. And that's what we try to do with the story is, find the nugget. And it's becoming more and more difficult, as your guests on the show talk about this a lot. It's breaking through the clutter. There's so much noise, so much chaos in the media space right now. We used to talk about, 10 years ago, we said the first 5 seconds are crucial. And what I preach is the first second. If you cannot capture somebody's attention and stop them in the first second, you're done. Well, how do you tell a story in a second? Well, you don't necessarily, but you have to have that attention, And so those are the things that we talk about a lot with our storytelling is we want to be authentic, we want to be truthful, we want to make sure that we are representing the brands that we work with and to the best of our ability and to theirs, but also doing it in a way that's going to break through the clutter, and a lot, we hear a lot about AI and all this, and AI is great. We were an early adopter of OpenAI back in 2022 when it first came out, created a SaaS application based around it. And that had like a 6-month span of just awesomeness. And then we were left in the dust, but just making sure that we're innovating in our technology, making sure that we're innovating in the ways that we're looking at things. I'm a big fan right now of AI music. That's how I got my start. I mentioned it, in advertising. I have a love of music, and so I've been rekindled my songwriting abilities and passion for songwriting and creating music has been rekindled over the summer just through Suno AI and some of the things. You could hum a trumpet part and it'll play it as a trumpet. Oh no, I want that to be a baritone saxophone. Boom, done. And those kinds of tools are so awesome, and being able to unleash creativity. But how do we use those tools to really tell a great story? Because as you see so many things out there like, oh man, that's cool, but that's not a connection. That's not going to drive sales. It's not going to help, add value to people. So I love technology. I love innovating. That's one of our core values here is making sure that we are, even though we're a West Virginia agency, we're leading that charge.
And thank you for dropping a little bit outside of West Virginia with mentioning one of the most incredible AI platforms out there, that it's Boston based, of course, with, with getting back into that. But it's incredible when we think about, offering up people a platform where to be seen and heard. You don't just end up telling their story, you multiply the impact of their business.
That's
And what
right.
they're doing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And that's what we're trying to do. That's
Yeah.
every day. That's our mission. Every client interaction, every piece of content we publish. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention video. Being the number one way that we're doing that. We're a video forward agency, and we love video. We love all forms of video. It could be an iPhone video or something shot on a cinema camera or whatever. So we love it all.
Awesome. Jim, this has been fantastic. You've shown our listeners here that building lasting influence isn't about being the loudest. It's about really being consistent, intentional, and humble. I love how you said, be all in with whatever you are doing. You have no idea how God is going to use your experience as a preparation for a greater purpose. That's a takeaway worth underlining. And just again, for everyone listening, real influence doesn't require a title. It requires presence, consistency, and service. And that's what's real here.
Yeah. Adam, you mentioned something there. I'm a person of faith, and I'm not ashamed to say this, but I view my business, Interaction Media, as a ministry. I'm not on the mission fields of Guatemala or Honduras. I'm here in Morgantown, West Virginia, by God, and that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to equip those around me to be great leaders and to be great followers, also, and to, like I said, go out into the marketplace with our talents and abilities and bless people.
Awesome. Jim, before we close, I know you mentioned a couple things earlier, but where can folks find you, connect with Interaction Media, and check out your book, Humble Influence?
Yeah. Our agency is at interactionmedia.com, and the book is humbleinfluencebook.com. There's a video on there. Folks can check it out and learn more about the book. And if somebody's interested, they could just send me an email. I'll send them a copy of the book. Just mention Adam W. Barney.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, perfect, Jim. And we'll drop links to all of that, of course, in the show notes below. Yeah. But I want to say that, big thank you again for joining me today.
Yes, sir.
And for, Jim, for our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Stay curious, stay energized, and keep questioning. We'll see you next time on Is Anything Real? Thanks, Jim.
Adam, that was awesome. You're very good at what you do.
If this episode of Is Anything Real resonated, you're probably at a moment where the old playbook isn't holding anymore. I work with transitioning founders and executives to install operating rhythms that hold under pressure. Not motivation, not hype. I've spent over 20 years inside high-pressure environments and worked with over 300 leaders through moments where clarity mattered more than speed. If you want clarity you can actually rely on, book a foundation call at adamwbarney.com. Clarity over chaos, always.